It's live stream meeting. 3, 2, 1. And go.
Okay, well, welcome to this event this morning. This is my second start. I made a false start about 2 minutes ago because we hadn't linked up on AI and vocational education and training. I'm sorry about my image here. My green screen is not exactly working as intended. Very curious image, but never mind about that. Here's the format of our meeting this morning. Is I'm going to be talking to you about the Taccle AI project, and it's a project funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. And after that, we have a panel. We have 3 people on the panel. Officially, there's 2, but I'm pushing the 3rd person in here. We've got Angela, who's from Pontedusky in the UK, like me. And we've got Sophia. And Sophia is the project coordinator. And we've got Gorka. Sophia's from the Institute of Technical Building in Germany. And we've got Gorka from the University of the Basque Country, all of whom, in my opinion, are experts on AI and education. I'm going to be asking them some questions, some of the issues. We've also got some questions which have already come in because we've run several of these panels, and it's quite interesting that the questions that come up are actually quite similar every time, which means they are major issues. But of course, we'd be delighted to have questions from you as part of the panel. So now, I think that's all I've got to say in advance. So now, with a bit of luck, I'm going to share my screen. It's always the dodgiest part of these operations because I've got so many windows open and I've got to try and find the right one. I found it. And I'm hoping you can all see this. Recording in progress. So they've missed my introduction. Never mind on the recording. I think we do quite well without that. So, I mean, the whole aim of the Taccle AI project was to look at artificial intelligence for and in vocational education and training, and what do teachers and trainers need to know. Now, one thing you've got to, which I suspect if any of you have worked on European projects, you'll know yourself. One of the issues is that I've got the wrong screen up here. Hold on a moment, you're going to have to. I actually need to stop sharing and share on another version. You'll see the same thing in a moment, but that was the PowerPoint version, and I actually want the version running in the Apple program, which is going to take me, obviously, Keynote, that one. We're back to it, and it's the same screen. We've made a whole series of these presentations, and they vary a bit every time. And that's an old one, which is missing some of the screen. But I mean, one of the points about this project is we've been running it now for 2.5 years, 2.25 years. Yes, 2.25 years. It was a 2-year project. We had a 1/4-year extension because basically delays caused by COVID. But as some of you probably know, you have to put in the application about 9 months before you start the project. Hold on a moment, I'm going to close some doors. You've got a bit of noise here. And so it was about 3 years ago. Now, look, 3 years ago, talk of the robots are coming, artificial intelligence is coming, jobs are going to be destroyed was all over the press already. But when it came to education, there weren't a lot of people talking about what's the impact of AI on education. That wasn't a big subject. And I was just thinking when I was preparing this presentation yesterday, gosh, we're in competition today. We've got 1,200 people at an Australian conference, online conference on AI and education. At the same time, UNESCO's got thousands of people. What's mainly a policy conference, which they're running online from their headquarters in Paris, with representatives of governments all over the world talking about AI in education. So in the 3 years since we've put that application in, this whole thing has blown up totally into a big issue. But not so much concentration on vocational education and training. I saw there was a K-12 session at the Australian conference, but there was just one session. Most of it's about AI in, firstly, AI in education in higher education, and of course, quite a lot of stuff about how AI can be used by organizations for training staff, but vocational education training still not so much. And I think that's quite important. But here's a quote. I don't even know where I got this quote from now. I can't remember where the quote comes from. I think it might be Donald Clark from the UK, who's written a whole book on this. And what he said is in the next years, AI would change learning, teaching, education. It's going to be fast. It's going to create high pressure to transform educational practices, institutions, and policies. Look, nothing runs fast in education. If there's one thing we know, education is slow to change. But this is building, this pressure is building up and getting greater. And it's going to transform educational practices even where it hasn't done already. So this is the unique nature of vocational education and training in AI. Normally, we're talking about what's the impact of AI on just on education itself in terms of delivering education. But AI in vocational education and training has a dual emphasis because there's AI for teaching for vets, but there's also learning about AI, which is becoming a major subject of vocational education training across different occupations. So you've got to look at those two aspects all the time. And that's been one of the major focuses in the project. And of course, in this, there's absolute key role being played by vocational teachers and trainers. And so the whole issue of how the vocational teachers and trainers themselves learn about AI is a big issue. So what we said anyway, we set out to do was to say, first of all, we're recognizing the competences of teachers and trainees are fairly critical in this, and we're going to extend the DigCompEdu framework. Most of you probably know what DigCompEdu is. It's a framework of competences, knowledge, and skills which are required by teachers. And at this point, that includes all teachers. It's produced by the European Research Centre. Version 2 of it has just come out, and I'd be very interested. I've not looked at version 2 yet to see what they're saying about AI in it. In the first version, 1.1, there was no reference to AI at all. So we started looking at saying, okay, we've got a general framework for training teachers and trainers and for their professional development and for the skills they need. But how does AI fit into that general idea? Then we've got Then we said we'd produce a toolkit, an online toolkit, producing some materials with a particular emphasis on open learning materials within that. So open education resources, a particular thing we've been keen to push all the time. I'll show you what the toolkit looks like in a moment, but is to say, can we produce open educational resources which are free for others to pick up and use and repurpose? And we recognize in that point that AI is moving fast. And some of the stuff we produce is not going to be used in textbooks in 20 years' time. We need it as real living materials, and we need other people to be able to pick it up and reuse it. And that's part of the toolkit. This I meant to change because I'm used the same picture 3 times, but never mind. I thought this would show the different products in the same picture. And we said very bravely, we're going to organize a massive open online course, a MOOC for around AI. And yes, that was the major points. Now, before that, of course, we did some background research and produced a report. And we're looking at particularly at AI and work. These are just, I mean, the report's available on our website, and I welcome you to pick them. We've got a shorter executive version for you, those of you who don't want to read the whole thing, which started similar how it expanded from, we planned it for 30 pages, and I think it ended up about 70. But there's a lot of good stuff in it. But here's just some highlights from it. And of course, this wasn't just us and Sophia. We have partners from Italy, and we have partners from Lithuania, we have partners from Greece in this. And these slides are included actually to show the breadth of the work aren't from me, but they're from other colleagues who work together. We worked collectively in developing this. And I think these slides actually come from Lithuania. But we looked at what was AI going to do in human work. We said there's going to be a substitution of humans in a wide range of work processes through task encroachment, not enroachment, and digital taylorism. So it's not so much probably that whole jobs are going to go, though in some occupations, the occupations may disappear, others will probably come out. But it's the tasks which will change. And so AI will replace humans for some tasks within particular occupations, industries, etc. occupations. And secondly, there's a complementary and enabling effect of AI in work processes. So we can see it's a bad thing, and most of the reports we get say it is a bad thing, but it can have a liberating effect in liberating human beings from boring, repetitive work. Yeah. And it's a series of different scenarios. There's not one answer to this, but the whole process of digitalization that's going on. On the one hand, you can see it's upgrading work and qualifications in all occupational fields. It's increasing work automation. It's a polarization of the world of work. This is one theory, that you're going to get elimination of middle-level jobs. Of course, we got that whole trend towards flexibilization and Uberization. What a particularly horrible word Uberization is, but I don't like Uberization. And we got a stronger networking of work processes through technological solutions, because machines themselves are connected together. They're not separated anymore. They communicate with each other. So you've got all kinds of different scenarios for how work is going to change. And of course, how work changes affects how vocational education and training affect. So you've got those there. There's an empowering effect of AI, but AI facilitates task encroachment. You've got automation resulting in substitution of routine and non-routine and higher skill jobs. it's interesting what is a routine job and what's not a routine job. If any of you are teachers, you'll be glad to know that teachers are supposed to be fairly safe at the moment because it's too non-routine for them to be able to automate. Of course, the other job they say is pretty much safe at the moment is building workers. So it's just not down to skills, although it is building work is a skilled thing, but it's due to the unpredictability of building work, which makes it very difficult and expensive to try and automate it. Okay. And this is one occupation. I think this might be one of Sophia's slides. This is looking at the mechatronic occupation and how it's changing and what it means for the work profile and the learning. So right through the project, we've been trying to say, okay, you've got these work processes changing, but what does this mean for vocational education training? What does it mean for curriculum development? What does it mean for learning? And what does it mean for cooperation? And this is a diagram that Sophia and her colleague Gorka drew up together to see how these things really change. So you've got real industrial processes. And can you simulate those by networking robots and production belt? And can you cooperate with industrial company partners? Can you get an active role for apprentices within that process of simulation, where teachers and trainers are arranging new work and learning tasks and developing new learning methods and new pedagogies? All those processes need to take place, and it needs to be a continuous process taking place, because this won't work for 5 years while your curriculum board sits and thinks as to what the curriculum should be and makes agreements. So things moving too fast for that. So it needs to be a process of continuing change. So but then we're coming to AI for vets. So I mean, remember I made that distinction. There's AI in vet in terms of the changing curriculum, the changing pedagogy process, but there's AI being used for vet. So some people called Pedro, Rubosa, Rivas, and Viverde. Oh, it's a 2019 UNESCO report, which is, of course, part of the process being discussed now and 221 in this big congress at UNESCO, said AI can promote personalization and better learning outcomes, exploring how AI can favor access to education, collaborative environments, intelligent tutoring systems to support teachers. At the same time, in their futures report, AI is warning about the dangers of commercialization or privatization of education and training through private companies, because AI is being developed not so much within the education service itself, but being developed by commercial companies. And perhaps that's something we can discuss later. So that's the optimistic viewpoint, that we're going to be able to extend education to everyone that needs it. And of course, that's one of UNESCO's for Sustainable Development Goal number 4. That's UNESCO's key aim. But at the same time, the increasing commercialization of these products poses a danger. All I think most of us agree on is teaching needs to be more orientated towards real work-related operational processes. You're not going to teach AI in a theoretical vacuum. And I think this next one, shows how an experiment in Germany, a project run in Germany, has produced a smart factory at a vet school, precisely to say AI is not an abstract thing we're talking, but you need to see how it works in process. It's a model of a smart filling plant. But sadly, because of COVID, we only had our first meeting, I think, was the only one we had face-to-face. We never traveled. It was all done through Zoom, because I would have loved to have gone and seen this. The pictures make it intriguing. And I did read a bit about it, but it's a self-programmed smartphone app which sort of programs the whole AI factory process. and it supports problem and action orientated learning. And there's a second one also, I love this one from Germany, Sonic the Hedgehog, which is a deep reinforcement learning project based on neural networks. I don't think I've got time to go into the difference between machine learning and neural networks here, but neural networks are probably the first, well, they're already here, but are going to be the big future of how AI is programmed. And it's designed to give an advanced knowledge of the Python programming language, with the AI supposed to be mastering different levels independently. I think that's as much, but if you want to know more about that, you can also ask Sophia, who can tell you more about it. So here's what we produced. In these meetings disseminating Erasmus Plus projects, we're supposed to tell you about all our products. These are new slides which I produced yesterday, and to be honest, I'm amazed by the amount of stuff we have produced. But this was the first one. This was the report, Artificial Intelligence in the Policies, Processes and Practices. It's based on a literature review. It's based on interviews. It's based on a survey. And as well as in a paper version, we've also got a whole series of videos around some of these outcomes. I draw some attention here, I think, to the survey. The survey we were planning to undertake in all the project countries. In reality, because of the various lockdowns, it became impossible. It was done in Germany, possibly because it was easier to get in touch with people there. Possibly, I suspect, because Germany has a history of replying to surveys, which is far better than most of the other countries, that people do reply at the percentage. But the interesting thing is there was over 50 replies from vocational teachers and trainers, and probably against our intuition, they were very enthusiastic about AI as a whole. They were enthusiastic. They were saying, this is good. This is really interesting stuff, but we need more professional development ourselves to enable us to seize and teach others the opportunities which AI is giving. Which quite surprised us. So that's that report. Here's the toolkit. I told you about the toolkit. We've arranged it in its interactive, well, it's hyperlinked to interactivism, but it contains a lot of videos, a lot of multimedia learning materials. 3 themes: what is AI? Second theme, the impact of AI. And the third one, instruments for vet teachers. All of it is developed, the toolkit's been developed in WordPress. Everything we've produced is open source. And I suppose if someone asked us nicely, we could roll this stuff up into a plug-in takeaway, which you could plug in yourself to your own platforms. But our idea is that people do take this stuff away, translate it into other languages, and also update it, amend it, change it. This is available. The report, I think, is available, and the toolkit are available in multiple languages already: in Italian, in English, in German, and in Lithuanian, and in Greek. So those are the languages we've got it in at the moment. Okay. Then the MOOC, what do we say about the MOOC? We were a bit nervous about the MOOC. The MOOC took us a lot more work than perhaps we'd anticipated. The MOOC, I'd say from the start, is in 2 languages. It's in German and it's in English. I was sort of coordinating the development of it. I think I got carried away. It's just there seemed to be more and more interesting things to explore. So there's 4 modules. One is the introduction, to the changing world of work, to what is AI, to uses of AI. Module 2 focuses on the world of work and what extent future jobs are threatened. Module 3 is AI in VET, including recruiting and motivating students, creating learning content, assessment, and administration. The one thing I say there is one of the things we get asked by teachers a lot is, can you give me examples? Can you give me real practice? Don't talk to me just about AI. I've seen all the hype about AI, but can you give me real examples of how it's doing? So we focus a lot on trying to get a lot of real examples of what AI is doing for teaching and learning into that MOOC. Module 4, what's the new skills required for teachers and trainers in particularly, looking at digital competency framework. And the final module, which I've not talked much about this morning, but so this issue, but it's a big one, is the ethical issue of AI. Not just the general issues of ethics, but particular issues of ethics in education and training, and how we can shape the use of technology, because not just respond to everything that technology throws at us. Where I said we got a bit carried away is I think that we divided the 5 modules into units. I think there are something like 64 units. Yeah, which is quite a lot. How many people do we have? I think, because we've not got done all the analysis yet, and you can ask Sophia later because she probably knows more than me. I think we had 373 people enrolled on it. And this is me digging into the back end of the WordPress site last night. I think about 210 of those was German. It was the German MOOC, and about 150, 160 were the English MOOC. I think quite a lot of them completed. We had a lot of very complimentary comments, and I suppose somewhere we were going to compile those. And the materials are there. I'd quite like to run the English one again in the future. We've got to think how we're going to resource that. We're certainly open to other people taking this and running this in other languages. And we're once more prepared to bundle the contents for you. And we're very open to you picking and choosing. You can, if you want, you can run the best of, pick the best bits you think, and add some more of your own content to it. So we're very happy with those numbers. We didn't actually dream we'd get so many. And the very last thing we produced, and this is a sneak preview because Sophia sent me this draft to proofread yesterday, and very pretty it is too, Sophia, is Artificial Intelligence and Vocational Education Training Policy Recommendations. We've produced 6 policy recommendations. We could have produced a lot more, but there's just too many to draw attention to. There's far more in the document as you read it. But we're talking about, we need the updating of vet curricula. That's pretty urgent. We need to incorporate competences for AI into all initial training programs for vet teachers and trainers. That's not been done yet, as far as we know. We need to encourage and support the development, searchability of sharing of open educational resources. We've produced a lot, but do people know they're there? How can people easily find them? Of course, we need continuing professional development, and we need support for collaboration between industries, vet schools, and training centres. That's urgent because we need to bring together the practice of the use of AI together with education and training for using AI, and to updating knowledge and competences of using AI in different occupations. That's the whole lot of the outputs from the project. There's our website where you can find it all, Taccle AI. There's quite a lot of stuff on that website. All the products I've talked about, apart from the policy recommendations, which will be there soon, are available through the website. Our project sadly ceases funding at the end of this month, but I'm pretty sure we're going to find ways to keep that website running, because it's not one of those boring project websites where you get the reports and you can find out just who the project partners are. It is very much an active website based around what's going on. And that's it. It's quite strange actually with this setup. I've never, only once before, talked with this setup at a meeting where most of you are on YouTube and I can't see you at all. It feels like talking away to a wall behind me. But thank you for listening anyway to us. And I think we're going to move over to a slightly more active part of the meeting. I'm going to ask Angela if she could briefly take over from me, because I have, it is a holiday where I am in Spain, and I have some childcare responsibilities that I can't get out of for just 10 minutes, and I'll be back to talk to you then. But I'll leave you in very capable hands with Angela, Gorka, and Sophia, who are going to be discussing some of the issues that the project has raised.
Hi there. Thanks, Graham. Let me just change.
Yeah, I already saw there's a question in the chat, right?
Yeah, so thanks all for switching channels. I'm really sorry that we started broadcasting and the two hadn't quite talked to each other properly, so there were people who were sitting watching a blank screen and while we were talking to an audience of nobody, but we've sorted that now and I think everybody's managed to move over, which is fantastic. So yeah, in the chat below the live stream, if you can add your questions and then I can add them across to the panel. But do we want to go for some questions first and then we'll talk to our experts? So we've had one question from Christine, who wants to know what role sustainable development aspects played in the project. And I guess, Sophia, you were the best person to answer that.
Yeah, thanks, too. Thanks for the question. I guess that's quite an important aspect in the discussion about artificial intelligence, to think about the sustainable part of it. And we focus more on the social sustainable part, to be honest, that we looked for. It doesn't make sense to implement AI projects in school just to update quickly qualifications. We need projects that develop competences more in the long term. And that is kind of, for me, like social sustainable development. But I guess your question is more in the direction of green sustainable development. And we included that in that we looked for sustainable projects where AI is used, or where you can use AI to be more sustainable. And we have that on our project websites and also examples in our MOOC. So that's how we address sustainable development.
So I think that might have answered the second question as well from Christine, because she's also saying, how do we address environmentally conscious use of AI opportunities?
Yeah, but I guess we address it a little bit, but there's still way for improvement. And that could be, for example, a new section or a learning unit in our MOOC to deepen that more.
I'd certainly be very interested in that.
Yeah.
Okay, so are there any other questions in the chat? No? Okay, please do add them and I can send them across. Okay, so let's go on to our expert panel, which is Sophia and Gorka. I'll just spotlight you both so everyone can see you. And then if you could introduce yourselves, we'll start with Sophia and then Gorka.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, Graham already said a few words about me. I'm working as a research associate at the Institute Technology and Education in the north of Germany. And in that context, I'm also the project coordinator of Taccle AI. And before that, I studied political science. So I'm interested in changes of society and the society in total. And of course, the digital transformation is one major, or has a major impact on society. So I always have this this perspective on. So I'm not from the pedagogical teacher part. Another project I'm working in is different competence development in the harbor industry. And there is also started 4 years ago, the project. In that project, AI is also coming more and more in the field, like for when a ship is coming and how to plan when the truck is taking the load or something. So AI is also getting there in, and that also has consequences for development of competences for workers in the harbor industry. But with Graham together, I'm working on the impact of AI and vocational education and training. So that's for a short introduction to myself.
Thanks, Sophia. And Gorka, who are you and why are you here?
Hi. My name is Gorka Roman. I'm professor and researcher at the University of the Basque Country. I'm also the president of the Basque International Research Association. That is a recently created association that we work it's composed by experts and scholars from different universities. So we work in this kind of topics. My background, I have different degrees and master's degrees that had nothing to do with artificial intelligence, such as anthropology or philology. But I didn't know about Sophia until this moment. I'm also a PhD in political science. So also I have another PhD in psychodidactics. But mainly, I'm more interested in the cultural and social aspects of the whole thing. How is it changing the whole context worldwide? I'm very interested in issues related to educative innovation and tools related to language teaching, where AI is a very important tool actually, and it's getting more importance lately. And also be involved in different national and international projects. I mean, like the principal investigator in some projects. Some of them are related to artificial intelligence as well. But I also have that educative background because I've been for more than 12 years a secondary school teacher. So I do have, from before I came to the university, I had the experience. So I've seen the changes as the ICT came into the lessons, how everything changed. And it's true that AI is changing everything. So basically, this is my background. So Angela.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll get straight into sort of the research question of the project. And just Sophia, what impact will AI actually have on vocational education and training across Europe?
Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of an overall question of our project. Well, and I guess first it's important to mention, and Graham already did that we have to distinguish the dimension of, are we talking about changing world of work and we have to prepare learners for this world? Or are we talking about the other dimension, using AI applications for teaching, learning, or organizational issues? And here in Germany, we have more the focus on the preparation of learners for for a different working world. And during the project, we also looked for projects of practice. And Graham already mentioned, for example, the Smart Factory project and the Deep Reinforcement Learning project. And I guess it's important, and Graham also mentioned that we do not always react to changes in the occupational world. Instead, we should try to prepare learners to adapt to different situations. So trying to teach more social and personal competences, so it's easier for them to adapt to changing working environments. And for example, taking new teaching and learning approaches like this project-based approaches could teach students to learn that. That's the experience we made in the project. And I can also put some links in the chat later, because then you can read about the project more deeply. And the dimension of using AI as a tool is not that broad discussed in vocational education. It's more in the higher education that we see that more often the discussion about that, but the vocational school teachers are open to it, but the focus is definitely on the preparation of the skilled workers right now.
Yeah, definitely. So What do you think? What does that mean for the teachers and trainers, Gorka?
Well, again, coming back to the same question that Sophia answered, I think that AI is getting a very dominant role in different aspects related to education and the role of the ICT in education, also in the technological industries, online business, online shopping, also the government's assistance services, and so on. Yeah, and everything is growing so rapidly. And as Sophia did with the German case, I'd like to introduce the Basque case. I don't know if you guys know, but Basque country is probably, let's say, is like the industrial motor of Spain, if you consider that. And it's all full of technological industries and heavy industries. And lately, I mean, and they work thanks to a system which is based on cooperatives. So the workers are the owners. So these companies are very important right now because they introduce the ICT and the new technologies within the working process. Yeah. And relating this to bed, I have to say that in the Basque country we have a dual system where students learn within the high schools, but they also work in the industries. So they do half. Yeah. That's why it's so important, this impact. So the students, they have their learning sessions where AI is more implemented gradually within schools, but they then go to the industries and they have this they have to work with the AI all the time. Yeah, so AI is taking it's not a good word, taking over. Now it's gaining more a more important role lately within vocational training in the Basque country. Yeah, so I think it's basic right now. But as Sophia said, I think that AI helps the teachers preparing their task, their teaching task, making easier some, more, as Graham said before, boring, automatic teaching. They can help in this kind of aspects. But they can also help the vet students designing some specific tools. It can also help students and teachers working with language translation. This is important impact as well in vet students, because our teachers and students sometimes are not very fluent in foreign languages. So thanks to AI and this translating machines and so on, they can now work in a more international way. And also, as Graham and I think Sophia also said, that they are automatizing the whole structure of the industries and the education with better students. And what does it suppose for teachers and trainers? I think that it's, as I said before, I think it's going to make it easier for teachers preparing some parts of their lessons. Some parts are very automatic. Nowadays, the teachers use something which is called the flipped classroom. So it's like instead of doing your lesson within schools, what you do is you send your students this lesson to their home so they can prepare it at home. And then when they come to the schools, they just can discuss about it and really work on it instead of losing that time. So I think AI can help a lot in that aspect as well. Yeah, doing this kind of flipped classroom methodology. As I think that Graham also mentioned I don't know if it's just preparing like a more automatic lessons, online lessons. So we can have the access to virtual tutors that can help the teachers doing their teaching work. It can be also a help to identify new topics in education. We can also measure students' performance in a more simple way, because sometimes it takes a long time evaluating our students, and some things can be easier and faster thanks to AI. It can make an easier online learning, distance learning, and it can also improve educational marketing for educative institutions. So I think that basically this is some of the things that will have a direct impact on our schools and bed schools as well.
Do you think teachers and trainers are prepared for all this, though? And I know there's been a big digital pivot with the pandemic. It's forced educators to use it, but are we prepared to use it properly?
No, I don't think so. I mean, also the survey we conducted in 2020, they were optimistic and they would like to learn it, but they told us they need support, they need offers that they can learn and also discuss like potential harms or the potentials of different applications. And I guess, or that was my feeling, that our MOOC was one contribution to that. Of course, it's just one instrument, we need more, but the good thing was we could use it for teachers in different stages of their professional development. So we had like participants who were studying to be a vocational teacher, then we had teachers who were in work, and we also had teachers who already finished and retired and could give good feedback of their experience from their work life. And this MOOC was a good idea to try to give first introduction to artificial intelligence and the impact on that. And that could be an instrument to qualify teachers for the new impact of AI on education.
Good. Okay, so along those lines, what are the harms and benefits of AI in pedagogical terms? I know, Gorka, you've touched on a few already, but if teaching becomes more automated, if training becomes automated, what are not just the benefits, but what are the harms for our students and our learners?
I think as an anthropologist and as Sophia, that we are in the political science things, I think there are some very interesting things. I think I'm gonna start from the harms. I'm gonna start from the catastrophic scenario. Okay. So I think, and this was mentioned by Graham, I think the most obvious harm, short time, is going to be the loss of jobs. So millions of people are going to lose their jobs. Okay, so these jobs that are very repetitive, they're like the chain jobs and this kind of people working in factories. More and more robots are taking over some positions, like in the car industry. The cars are made mostly now by robots, and more factories are being opened lately that they don't even need humans. You guys mentioned that construction is something that is going to be safe. But they are already, I think in Australia, they already created a robot that can make a house like very easily. They're already making houses with it. It's not very big buildings, but they're making houses with it. So I think every single job that doesn't really need a person can be in danger of being lost in this sense. The thing is, what is going to happen with these professionals? What is going to happen with these people? They want to get money to live, to sustain their themselves. No? So this is going to be a big problem for the governments and for the systems. So they will have to find alternative for these people. Yeah, this is one of the harms, and I think it's one of the biggest problems that is going to be from the implementation of AI in some jobs and the distraction. Another one is the control of the society, because governments already control society. I mean, there's cameras all around the world. I mean, we have face recognition. The governments already know what we do. We only need to go on the Facebook or any other social media, and you have our personal ads, created just for us, because artificial intelligence is already working there. Yeah. So we are losing privacy and anonymity in this sense. So governments might want to use this information, but not only governments, also companies, as happened before with Facebook, what all the personal data was stolen and given to companies, private companies, that now are using that data to make their business. For instance, I'm receiving like hundreds of calls of telephone companies, and I don't know how did they get that information. So this is something that can be a really big problem as well. Yeah. So apart from that, and as I said before, our liberty, our freedom can be in danger as well. You have some countries like China, and we have some countries like Mexico, where even the criminal gangs can use this artificial intelligence, such as the Zetas, which is a very dangerous gang, and they're actually using this kind of technologies. They're detecting people who are calling the police to denounce them, and they're killing them. So this is something that is happening right now. So yeah, AI has very, very good things, but some problems as well. So I don't know if I should talk about the good things or let Sophia probably talk about the good things as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can try. I also would like to refer to a question I saw in the chat from Christina. Like, she was asking, how can we open up more vet teachers and trainers to AI opportunities? And I think, first of all, we have to ask, what challenges do we have in education? And then we can think if AI applications can be a tool to solve these challenges. And if we can show that this is an appropriate tool, then we have to be open. I mean, we do not want to say it definitely is. We want to try to investigate if it can help to solve these challenges. I think then we can also open up more vet teachers to use it. But depends if it is really useful. And I mean, right now, we do not have that much of empirical research who's telling us, okay, there is a better learning success. And then we also have to figure out what is learning success. For example, if we look back to one slide Graham showed us from the UNESCO, there was like this citation with AI for better learning outcomes. But what are better learning outcomes? Are we just measuring the grades? And if the grade is getting better, we directly can say, okay, that was a positive effect of the AI application. Or do we want to improve motivation of students and want to support them and enable them to be able to learn for themselves? And then I think we often miss this part of what is pedagogical useful. And of course, we have this AI ed tech industry. They want to sell their products, but we need more teachers to know about AI, because they have the expertise in what is pedagogical valuable. And so we have to include them in the discussion and give their expertise in it.
And you only need to see the case of Finland, who was for many years and one of the best countries and education systems in the PISA program. And actually, lately, they just avoid using so many ICTs in their education process, because they saw that the students, instead of improving, they weren't improving, actually. They have more problems when writing, more spelling mistakes, and stuff like that. So actually, this is something to consider as well. And again, I also heard about the humanoid robots. Yeah, so there might be a humanoid robot to teach the students more basic stuff. Let's say more repetitive stuff and so on. Of course, they couldn't teach philosophy, I guess, or at some point that they might be able to do that, to talk about human values and human symbols and stuff like that. Yeah, we don't know what's the limit of the artificial intelligence, but in that process, we are forgetting something very important in the educative process, which is the authority and the respect and this kind of more human things that the teachers have. So I don't know. I think AI should be a tool, but not the tool. I don't know if I explain myself. I mean, an AI program cannot be a teacher. It has to be a tool to help the teacher. So the role has to be, in my opinion, limited at some point, because there are some, I don't know, this can be something tricky, actually.
Yeah, I think you open up a new point, because you said the tools should help teachers. And I guess that's important, that we also include teachers or pedagogical staff in the development of the AI systems. So they can tell us, what do I need and what is helpful for me? And I have the feeling that in the developing AI systems for education, for every AI system, you always have the domain knowledge included. If you're developing a new tool for medicine or something, you always have medicine stuff in it. But in educational applications, I'm not sure if that is always the case. And I had a meeting 2 weeks ago with someone, with IT people who were developing an AI platform. And they told me, oh, it's so great, we can deliver individual learning content. And I was like, wait, you are giving us an individual pathway to learning content, but the content itself is not individual at all. And they were like, oh, yeah, you are true. And we have never thought about it. And it's not even a crazy point I made. I was like, that's something you can read in all the education documents, but they have never thought about it. And I mean, that's already showing us that it's so important to include teachers. And that's something I hope the Taccle AI project could do a bit to involve more teachers in it and say, okay, it's also for you time to take part in that discussion, even if it's sometimes it's a bit abstract because you do not have it in teaching practice right now, but that's exactly the good thing. It's still the chance to discuss it, and we do not have it already. Because on another conference I've been, there was like a little fight on the stage because everyone was asking, okay, but what applications do we have in school? We have no AI applications instead of like using a translator or something like adaptive systems. We do not have that in school. And then someone else was like, yeah, we do not have it because if we have first to discuss if we want it, and then we have to develop in the sense we could use it pedagogically valuable.
Yeah, you're totally right. Sometimes teachers are given tools and very expensive tools and very complex tools. So when they receive these tools, they say, so what? How can I use this? And this is unreal. I mean, I cannot use this. This is not pragmatic. So I think all these projects we are trying to foster, like the Erasmus Plus projects, what we normally do is create content together with the teachers, and then try to disseminate them through MOOCs, and teach the teachers how can they use this kind of tools. I mean, we have to think that I think that the first big meeting worldwide on AI and the use in education was the Beijing consensus that was in 2019. I mean, this only 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I mean, this is growing so fast that we are sometimes getting lost within the context. So yes, I actually think that this kind of proposals should be proposed by the educative system of the best schools or whatever, and then we need the help of those translators that will be the programmers, the experts doing Python and other experts, and help them creating those tools instead of creating tools and giving them without testing them or agreeing with them. So
yeah, not sure how we can really do that, but yeah, we have to try it.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I think these Erasmus Plus projects are a good tool to do that, actually. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I always used to find as a teacher that there was always a new tool to learn how to use, and it was sometimes easier to stick with what you knew than to spend the time having to learn so many different things.
Yeah.
Okay, I've noticed Graham's back, so I'm going to bring Graham back in. Hi, Graham.
I'm here. I'm enjoying sitting listening
Nice.
to all of you speaking. There's some very good questions here.
Yeah, we've got some good questions from audience as well to add in now. So there we go. There you are, all three of you. So we've got one here. It says, is AI-based assessment, so assessment done through AI, is it fair? Is it a fair idea?
I mean, it always depends a bit on the context and about the exact AI system that is used in that context. However, I guess I mean, there are situations in which it can be fair. For example, if I remember, it's not that long ago that I finished school, I can remember I got never feedback, only in the end of a school year. And would be, for me, to be honest, super nice if there would be a bit more feedback. And if it would be just like multiple choice questions and I'm getting feedback and individualized learning content to practice my strengths or my weaknesses a bit more, I guess that would be nice and fair, but still to give the grade, I'm on the track that it should be the choice of the teacher, because I also guess like correcting assessments is also important for teachers to get to know their students. And if you do not do that anymore, I think we lose a connection between students and teacher. And as I think learning is also a social thing, we definitely have to keep that.
I'll come in on this
Yeah,
one. I'm quite enthusiastic about AI-based assessment. Basically because I think assessment has been very bad before, and particularly in vocational education and training, there is never, even in the best German systems, there is never enough formative feedback to learners. And I think the potential is there to use AI to give formative feedback. I mean, initially, yeah, we got multiple choice questions, which are rubbish. But we've now got to the stage, if you look at Bolton University's, I think it's called First Pass system, where they're using AI natural language processing and crowdsourcing stuff. So they're crowdsourcing teachers' replies using natural language processing then to read the students' replies and giving feedback based on that. And it seems quite successful. The big one, mind, I think, is because so much of vocational education training is active-based, not just written-based. The big one is actually if you can start giving feedback based on video input, and we're some way off that, I suspect, at the moment.
Here we have the two faces of the same coin. I mean, teachers, we are, I mean, as a teacher and as a university professor as well, we are always complaining about how long does it take correcting essays and the materials. I mean, you have to think that sometimes we have a lesson, a classroom with 100 students at the university. Well, in our high schools, it can be 30, 35. But if you need to correct for just one term, 15 papers or whatever, it turns like it is 100 or 1,500 papers to be corrected. That takes a huge amount of time. And then you need to carry out research and other kind of things. But we need to take into account as well that the European framework of education is implementing the cross-curricular competences. And the cross-curricular competences are more related to how you behave as a person, how you behave as a good citizen, your values, respect to other cultures and stuff like that. So I don't know if the AI can assess this kind of competences. As I said before, maybe AI is not very useful in subjects such as philosophy, anthropology, or whatever. It can be helpful in other kind of subjects such as maths or I don't know, yeah. And in BET, it can be very helpful when using programs with tutorials and stuff like that. But when it comes to cross-curricular competencies, I have some questions myself. So that's why I say I don't know what's the limit of AI. I don't know if at some point we will have a computer which is going to be a better philosopher than Plato. I don't know if that's going to happen at some point. This like science fiction, like Matrix. But I don't know. This is a boom. This is changing so fast. We don't really know what the limits are.
But I guess we do not know what the limits are, but we should fix the limits, don't we? I mean,
yeah.
The
totally
question, do we want that it is a philosopher? I don't want it. So I think that's something we also have to do, like having more strict ethic frameworks on what we want AI to do and what not.
There we go. But we need to think, I mean, as an anthropologist, and so many years ago, I heard, I think like 24 years ago, some of my teachers told me, you know, in the future, things are going to change. Countries and governments won't rule anymore. Companies will rule the world. I say, that's science fiction, but things are changing and companies are more and more powerful. And now it's not about, and we have seen with the thing of the vaccines, the AstraZeneca problem, and these kind of things. No, it's the power companies have. So I don't know. This is going to be something about the ethics. What's the power of the companies in these ethical decisions, and what's the power of the countries? Who is going to rule it? As I said before, I mean, there's been only this first international consensus meeting in Beijing, but governments are meeting, politicians are meeting. Who is changing all these things? Is the governments? Is the companies? So I don't know.
Okay, so sort of along the lines of assessment, because I can see assessment being really useful in a sort of learning context and testing recall and all that. But what about in like an interview situation, if someone's career is based on it? So what do you think about AI-based interviewing, sort of job interviewing?
Again, more and more companies are using psychologists to do interviews sometimes, no? The human resources members are sometimes psychologists. So they need to see sometimes if you like this person as with his human values. I mean, like working in a team, he looks like a very nice person, assertive, empathic, so on. Can AI detect an assertive and an empathic person? I don't know. So that can be tricky.
Yeah, but look, the reality is more and more companies are using AI. It's not that could be tricky, but regardless of whether it's tricky or not, they are using AI. And this is one of the areas where I am extremely worried about bias, which we know is an AI problem, whether conscious or more unconscious bias, because of the training sets of data they're using. So I think there's a lot of problems in this area at the moment, with more and more companies using AI for interviewing and making decisions on who's the employed, or just scanning in job applications. And of course, if there is already bias within the AI, then that bias will be reinforced by the machine learning of the activity of interviewing themselves. So it just goes on. I mean, this is going to be learning in a very bad way. So I think this is quite a dangerous area, actually.
Yeah,
it is
definitely agree.
Nowadays, AI technology can do face recognition. They can even read your the eyeballs and see if you are afraid, if you are nervous, and things like that. So I mean, the parameters can be, I don't want to hire a person who is afraid or whatever. No, and so that can be very dangerous, as you said before. So, sorry, Sophia, I think I.
Oh.
Yeah, I think most applications are already screened by an AI before they get to a human in the first place these days. You've already screened out people, so if there's any bias in it, then those people are gone.
I mean, to go in there, I mean, it makes sense to have, like, for example, if you have a chatbot and you can, as a candidate, I can ask some questions about what are the requirements or something like that, and the chatbot is answering me, yeah, okay, you have to upload your stuff and blah blah blah. Then it's okay. But I do not want that AI system, first of all, decides if I am at least someone is looking at my CV.
The only good thing that I can think about it is that if we avoid racism or you know, or we try to promote gender equality, for instance, no equity, and artificial intelligence or the program doesn't work on this aspect that you a person might consider when hiring someone. No? So if AI is used in that sense, can be more inclusive. So lately we had a problem here that because the company didn't want to hire this woman because she was getting pregnant, you know, and we can't, this kind of problems related to structural violence or innocent prison or whatever. So if AI is trying to implement like more, you know, equitative or equity policies, I mean, that could work in that sense, but it is dangerous as well.
So how do we mitigate that? How do we get AI to be coded so that it's always fair?
I mean, always fair is quite difficult, but we could first of all start to get more women in the AI industry. For the report we wrote for the Taccle AI project, I was looking in the gender gap report from 2020. It was something like just 1/4, like 25% or something, were women in the AI and data science jobs, and that's not enough. That's also for other unrepresented groups, but we need more equal teams for developing AI systems. And even then, we still have the bias of data sets. But if we already have people in the developing teams, we have different perspectives. And that means not only include women, but also to include other underrepresented groups in it. We also, and there's education playing a crucial role. We have to motivate young girls to go in careers in AI or data science, and just to build role models and show them. Because to be honest, it was almost the same for me when I finished school. It was like there were almost no women I knew in an IT sector field or something. And it was a lot for the friends of mine who were all going to social science, political science, and it was great. But still it was not even an option. And it was not because we were not good at math or physics. It was exactly the opposite, to be honest, but it was not an option for us. And for example, right now, while I was working in the Taccle AI project and all the stuff, now I started a part-time study for computer science because I was like, why should I not do that? So I'm trying now, but we have to do that earlier so that it is a possible option for younger girls to go in that direction.
Totally agree with you, but this is because from many decades ago, university careers or university degrees are very genderized. So I think this is part of the social structure and also symbolic violence. I mean, women many times are taught not to be engineers or design, whatever, you know. So this I live every day. Now I'm teaching at the Faculty of Education, and I see that 90% of the future teachers are women. When I used to teach at the faculty, the engineering faculty, 90% of my students were men. So this is something that we have to change from the base. And as you said before, this is something that it has to be changed from schools. But we need to know that this is part of the structural violence. I mean, small girls are dressed with pink color, and small boys, when they're virgin, are dressed with the blue color. So this is part of the whole, cultural structure of our societies. So this needs a structural change. And when we change from bottom top, probably we might change this. And as I said before, being now or taking part of this change within our society's education systems, which is AI, if women are not taking their positions there, this means that they're going to be apart from this future power as well. So this is something very dangerous as well. So we should involve them in this whole process somehow.
I mean, the other thing we have to look at is the computer industry, don't we? The IT industry. And let's face it, its culture as a whole, I'm sure there's many wonderful companies there, but the culture as a whole of the IT industry, and particularly actually the startup industry, because ICT flourishes around startups. And the startup philosophy is you bootstrap, you work your guts out for 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week, until you finally make some profit and then you sell it. It's not a good culture. It's not a culture for family life. It's not a work-life balance. And so if women look at that industry, and yes, there are good companies out there, but the image of the industry isn't that of the good companies. And if women look at that and say, that's not the kind of life I want, then you can understand that. So we need that an image, we need to change not just the image, but the practice of the industry, that it becomes an industry in which women want to work.
Yeah, I totally agree. But that's why one of the reasons why the European population is going down and down, because young people don't want to have sons or daughters anymore. I mean, because the job conditions, mainly these changing job conditions, don't allow to do that. Yeah. But again, yeah, women are always facing the worst case scenarios, which is having to sacrifice their professional lives if they want to create a family as well. So this is always the same. So governments should change this situation. But again, I mean, it's a very complex situation. If we are AI and ICT, the ICT industry is mainly private. So I don't know.
Okay, so from one tricky subject to another. Automation's going to lead to a loss of jobs in the future. How do we deal with that?
I mean, it's a complex question, actually. I mean, we could be talking here for years about this, because is this part of the economic system, capitalism? Should we need to change the whole process? Can a society live, for example, with 70% of unemployment? So I don't know.
But look, it's not all pessimistic views on this. I still think a really interesting book, if people wanted to look at it from a positive side, is a book called 21st Century Luxury Communism by a socialist journalist called Aaron Bustani. And what he says is this is a wonderful future. AI is part of the technologies which offer us a future where we don't all have to work extremely long hours, where we don't have to do dirty jobs. There is that potential that we can use that technologies for shortened working weeks. Don't forget, there's this whole movement in some countries now towards a 4-day working week, with heavy lifting being done by AI and by technology. There's a chance to have more leisure time. There's a movement towards a universal wage, universal minimum wage for everybody, regardless of whether they're working or not. There are choices there, of course. There's another scenario where Facebook take over the world, but there are choices, and it's not an inevitability. Just on that jobs thing, incidentally, I think if you look at the different reports on jobs at threat from automation and AI, there's vastly different numbers being put about, vastly different numbers. I think the overall number is inflated. I think that actually what is likely is that the content of jobs will change, and it will be tasks within jobs as a whole. There are some occupations which probably suffer. I mean, accountants comes to mind as accountancy. It comes to mind as an occupation which probably large parts of it can be dealt with far more efficiently by an AI than by human beings. But the number of jobs where the whole job is threatened, I think, is less than is being made out. But I do think that there's going to be a big change in tasks. And one of the big implications for that is the people doing those occupations now are going to have to learn new skills. And that's why I think the whole issue of continuing professional development in vocational education training is so important, and has received much less attention in recent years than initial vocational education training. And I think that balance has got to change somewhat, and we've got to look back at that again.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes I'm more pessimistic. I'm more like 1984, more George Orwell future. But I think there are, if we, delete these very automatic jobs, such as like, for instance, I'm going to give you the example here. We have in the Basque Country a company which is called Antei Batuak. that I don't know how you say that in English. I mean it hires like thousands of people with mental disability. How you say, with the special needs, people with the special needs. And these people.
Social industry. So it's
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, thank you. So these people can only do very basic and easy routines. I mean, these jobs can be totally cancelled, erased, deleted, because we don't need them anymore. Yeah, but this is a way of being part of an inclusive society. This is part of a pedagogical strategy of giving employment to people that need it. But it's not only these people. I mean, there's millions that are doing very basic and job routines and so on. Yeah. If you cancel them, you cannot recycle these workers in some other more qualified sectors, because probably, I mean, a person with who is 40, 50, even 60-year-old, we have to think that all the governments are saying that we need to retire older. Some are talking about 70, 75-year-old people. I mean, working. I mean, you cannot recycle these people in, more, in jobs that they require, more higher education or whatever. Yeah. So the problem is, what are we going to do with these people? Is the system able to cope with this kind of unemployment? Are we going to be able to create benefits? I mean, for me, a great future is what you say, Graham, is a 3-4 hour labor day, or even not need to work, or being living in an island in the Caribbean Sea and working from home with my computer. I love it, because I mean, we were talking before. I mean, it's been like 30 days raining. Now it's snowing. I live in the top of a mountain. I love to live in the Caribbean, working from there, or not working. But is the world sustainable if we do that? I don't know. I mean, maybe it is, and I hope it is. But I don't know.
I think, to be honest, to come back to Graham's point of changing tasks, then loss of jobs, I guess it's important that we are right now looking for instruments, how we can fix that, or how we can find short and midterm instruments to qualify, for example, in the initial training, people for changing demands on the labor market. And in Germany, we have this, I'm not sure if that is a European instrument, like the additional qualifications that you have, like that you can get this additional qualification, for example, in programming. If you see in an occupation like mechatronics, it's getting more and more important to have like basic knowledge of programming, and then you can get like this 8-week courses in doing a project and learning how to program stuff, and that is cooperation with vocational schools together with companies, and that's totally hands-on, like project, real-oriented working tasks. And I guess something like that could be a good instrument to prepare for changing working worlds and also for continuing professional development.
Okay, so the change can be done if we start working with the young people. So these young people will be prepared, but the problem is going to come with the older people.
Yeah, I mean, in Germany, it always takes quite a long time to update curricula. So if you update it now, it's already too late. If it's coming in 2 years, then we already have not new skills, but special needs. And this additional qualification gives you the chance to integrate these new competences quite short and midterm.
So what skills?
But what are we going to implement in the curricula? I mean, basically, what we can implement is going to be the programming, for instance, or the use of programs. So this is pretty much it. Are we going to create new subjects related to the programming, for instance?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah. So how is going to be implemented the AI in our curriculum? You know, I mean, are we going to create a specific subject related to AI, designing AI programs, programming, etc.? Or are we going to implement the use of programs that will help teaching other subjects? This is the idea. Are our governments changing? Because at least the Department of Education of the Basque government, which is, I think, it just released a new program some months ago, and I think it's very advanced. And they didn't even talk about AI. They sometimes talk about ICTs, but in another way, but not about AI. So.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the special occupation, but I mean, it's important that the companies and vocational schools work together, so the companies can tell, okay, that's something we are already doing in our factory, so that needs to be incorporated also in the vocational school. So that's why I think it's also really important that there's also, I mean, in Germany, it's also the dual system. Even there, where it should be a strong connection between the learning venues, it's sometimes kind of difficult to really live that. So, and the teachers told us most of the time it's just working if the teachers have a personal contact to someone in the company. Then they can do some projects and do some real working tasks in vocational schools. But if there is not personal contact, it's sometimes really difficult. And I think we have to try to push that a bit more, that they are talking to each other. So it makes more sense to have the students in vocational school learning what is actually used in the factories. And the Smart Factory project Graham mentioned in his first input is exactly doing that. They have a smart factory plant, which is exactly the same, just in smaller, like in the Volkswagen plant in the neighboring factory. And there they can directly learn what they have to do when they are leaving school 5 months later. And projects like this are in my thinking, kind of really nice.
I think we are doing that function with this project, because as you said, I totally agree. Factories are private sectors, and Graham mentioned it before. I think the private sector changes much faster than the education context. Yeah, it takes so long to change the curriculum, it takes so long to change the programs, the methodologies, etc. Because you need to reach to agreements. It's something that comes from laws and decrees that are approved by the politicians. So this takes ages. So I think companies might be the ones bringing those changes, and us with these projects can be the bridge between the both of them.
I think so too.
Absolutely. Okay, we're almost at time, guys, so thank you so much. It's been fascinating. I could sit and listen to you talk for hours. It's great. So we've got Graham, have you got anything to say to finish up?
Well, no. I mean, I think we have this discussion. I missed 10 minutes of it, but this discussion very much exposes the issues. We haven't solved everything through a project. If one project could solve everything, it would be wonderful. But what we have done, I think, is opened up the terrain, opened up a landscape where we can look at those issues. My thing to say is that I dread that projects run their lifetime and then disappear. I don't think this is going to. I mean, what I didn't say earlier is certainly we have spin-outs. I mean, Gorka is working with us on a project to AI in schools. Me and our colleague George from the Greek partners in the project are working on producing an AI-powered chatbot in careers education. So it's spinning out and extending, but I mean, we need more people to be working with us. Please look at the materials we've got and think about whether you or anyone else in your countries or your cities or your institutions could use those materials and help develop them and continue them on, because we need to build something of a movement here almost of people who both understand what AI is and what it poses, but also understand how we can, if there's one thing I would like to see, it is teachers and educators involved in the development of the use of AI in the future. What I dread is that there will just be commercial applications which are given to teachers and trainers with no say on them and no real thought as to why. And so it's growing that involvement of people within the process. So that's my last plea.
Okay. So, thank you everybody. We'll make the recording available for those that signed up, and you can carry on chatting to us over on Twitter. We've got hashtag Tackle AI, and yeah, find what you can from the website, and hopefully we'll be in touch again soon in a seminar sometime in the not